meeting of our Regional Transit Advisory Panel, or as we'll call it today, RTAP. Before we go any further, first off, Happy New Year, everyone. Can you believe it's 2025? How many people remember it being 2000? We were wondering what the heck was going to happen, right? I know the new year brings with it a lot of activity and things to attend to. So on behalf of our staff, and I know our transit providers, I just want to thank you for prioritizing this meeting and your time for what is always a very important discussion about how we continue to advance public transportation in our region. What I always like to do as we start these meetings is go around the table and just do a real quick introduction of your name and who you represent and your title. So I'll start that, and then you're probably wondering what World Wrestling Federation Championship Pavitra won last week. I'll let her talk about that in just a moment. Again, Happy New Year. My name is Bob Crum. I am the Executive Director here at the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and Transportation Planning Organization. Pavitra?
Good afternoon. I'm Pavitra Parthasarathi. I'm with the HRTPO and apparently now the WWE champion. Someone asked, is that your dream? I never dreamt of this, but not to take credit, this is actually the belt that our team won for the 2024 Hampton Roads Datathon. I sent an email to our transit partners because the topic was about, they looked at transit bus stops in the region, looking at land cover, urban heat index, trying to look at what are the bus stop locations where we could prioritize improvements so people don't feel as much heat considering climate change and everything. So we won the inaugural belt in 2022 and then kind of let it go in 2023, but we're super happy it's back in our building. So that's kind of why it's here. One of the Sarah Kidd, who's our GIS data and analytics manager, will be briefing our technical committee in February. She's been briefing other groups as well. Again, very high level. It was it's supposed to use open source data, and they just use data from DRPT and other such portals. But we thought it's a great opportunity to kind of talk about the overlap between transit, bus stop canopies, urban heat, and all of those things. And the team was super excited to get the belt back. So if you see any of them, please pass on your congratulations. But I'll go with the WWE story. That seems better for me. So.
I'm Rob Case, Chief Transportation Engineer here at the HRTPO.
Shannon Glover, the Mayor of the City of Portsmouth. Happy New Year.
Brian Pennington, Government Relations Director for Norfolk. I'm about 6.5, 7 weeks into the position, and I'm just here to support my friends at the HRT.
My name is Malia Amos. I'm here representing Portsmouth with the Community Advisory Committee, and my day job is that I work for Virginia Beach Department of Public Health as their Director of Health Equity.
Good afternoon. I'm Janice Taylor. I work with various organizations. Right now, my hat is with the League of Women Voters. I'm the transportation chair, as well as the local board member.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Gennady. I'm on my second day on the job at the Norfolk International Airport as a Chief Commercial Officer. So on behalf of Mark Perriman, the CEO, he sent me here this afternoon. And I'm just 3 days out of uniform out of the Navy. So I think a lot of familiar faces in here, just retired and taking on this role. So I'm happy to be here. Happy New Year.
Jeffrey Descala, I am the Grant Support Specialist here at HRTPO.
Good afternoon, I'm Sandra Brandt. I'm with Step Up Incorporated.
Good afternoon, I'm Diane Kaufman, Regional Director for U.S. Senator Tim Kaine.
Sorry.
Excellent, thank you. Good afternoon, I'm Brian Smith with Hampton Roads Transit.
Good afternoon, my name is Noelle, and I'm with Hampton Roads Transit.
Good afternoon, Amy Brazel, Director of Contracted Services and Operational Analytics with Hampton Roads Transit.
Good afternoon, Ray Amoruso, Hampton Roads Transit, Chief Planning and Development Officer.
Happy New Year. Matt Scalia with Williamsburg Area Transit Authority, Executive Director.
Good afternoon, Ben Goodall, Director of Planning and Administration with Williamsburg Area Transit.
Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Steve Sims with Williamsburg Area Transit Planner.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Zolas. I'm the CEO with Senior Services of Southeastern Virginia.
Sorry about that. You could just shout it out. Tim Walker from the Department of State downtown Norfolk.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Wiley, and I serve as the Trainer for Diversity and Inclusive Excellence at Old Dominion University.
Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Dr. Claudine Kizard from Tidewater Community College. I serve as the Institution Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Good afternoon. I'm Casey Roberts. I'm the Executive Vice President for Strategy and Development with Reversibility Resources.
Good afternoon, Mary Kate Andrus with Civic Leadership Institute.
Hi, Keith Moore, Senior Vice President, Virginia Wesleyan University.
Good afternoon. I'm Brad Martin. I'm a civil engineer with WPL Site Design, and I serve on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Virginia Beach.
Hi, Happy New Year. I'm Kendra Green. I'm the Executive Director of the Elizabeth River Trail Foundation.
Hey, good afternoon. John Paul, representing Thrive, the young professional arm of the Hampton Roads Chamber.
I'm Matthew Harrington. I'm a transportation planner here at the TPO.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Gadulda-Yatrovsky, Chair of the Community Advisory Committee.
Afternoon, I'm Rick Dwyer. I'm the Executive Director of the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance.
Todd Nichols, Deputy Director of the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance.
Good afternoon, Quan McLaurin, DEI and Title VI Civil Rights Liaison for the PDC and the TPO.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandy Monsma. I represent the future of Hampton Roads with these two guys.
Good afternoon, Greg Lewis with Future of Hampton Roads and also with Hampton Roads Association for Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International.
Peter Shaw, I'm here because Bob says so. I'm like these guys. I'm with the Future of Hampton Roads, and I'm a retired TCC Professor Emeritus of Business Administration.
Great. And going back around, anybody? Yes, sir, please. Yes, if you could just press when it turns red, you're on.
Can you hear me? Hey, Charlie O'Brien, Chairman of the Gen Z Commission.
Very good. Anybody else who we missed as we went around? Thank you for your patience with the microphones. Really appreciate it. So let's go through a couple of preliminary items and then jump into our important discussion today. First off, approval or modification of the agenda. Just to review those items on our agenda today, we're going to talk about the upcoming General Assembly session, which is going to start on Wednesday. And we're specifically going to talk about a request that we want to be coming together as a region on to support funding requests related to maintaining and operating our light rail system, the TIDE. So you'll be hearing from HRT on that item. And then for WADA and any other transit partners in the room, we certainly want to understand any other transit initiatives that we want to be supporting as a General Assembly opens. From there, at your last meeting, you asked for a report on paratransit service in coverage zones in the Hampton Roads region. I know Amy will be prepared to provide us that briefing, and then we'll wrap up with a bit of around the table on any reports that you all might have on transit related items, as is our regular practice at these meetings. So if that sounds like a good agenda for you, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Glover. Could I have a second, please? Second, coming from WADA. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Public comment, anybody in the audience? Greg, would you like to address the RTAP? All right. You have your minutes included. Mr. Gaduldi-Utrowski, thank you. We did make a tweak relative to your position on our RTAP. But with that minor amendment, could I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask our HRT friends to please come on up to the podium for what we think is going to be a very important briefing and a very timely presentation. Before Brian does that, the one thing I want to refer you all to is in your agenda package is our regional legislative agenda that's been approved by the boards of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. These legislative priorities have unanimous support from our 17 local governments in Hampton Roads. And you'll see as part of these priorities, a statement that we want to advocate for appropriate funding and increased funding for all three of our regional transit systems. So Brian, this certainly fits in and is very timely. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian Smith and ask him, did you want to do the video first, Brian? Okay, so Marquet, we're going to start this off with a quick video here.
Virginia has three public transit rail systems, Metro Rail and Virginia Railway Express, both in Northern Virginia. And in Hampton Roads, it's the Tide Light Rail. Light Rail provides a safe, convenient, and reliable transportation option for tens of thousands of residents and visitors every month. People rely on the Tide to get to work, school, and medical appointments, to shop, and to attend baseball games, concerts, festivals, and special events. 2/3 of trips are between work and home, and about half the riders use the system at least 5 days per week. Light rail plays a vital role in the region's multimodal transportation network. Constructed with local, federal, and state funding, the Tide opened in August 2011 with 11 stations along 7.4 miles of track. Today, it's HRT's second busiest mode of transit. On-time performance is consistently over 98%. The fleet of 9 Siemens S70 trains are powered by electricity through overhead catenary lines and 7 power substations. Trains operate across 18 signaled intersections, 9 gated road crossings, and 5 bridges and overpasses. The Tide has been well maintained, but its infrastructure and fleet are beginning to show their age, so adequate funding is needed to sustain and maintain the system in a state of good repair. This includes daily maintenance, power systems, tracks, safety and security equipment, passenger station upkeep, and more. Delayed investment or deferred maintenance result in less reliability, increased exposure to safety risks, and more costly repairs in the future. In addition to local and federal funding, a primary funding source for rail operators and all types of public transportation in Virginia is the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund, or CMTF. Rail modes have unique costs and needs that are very different from bus transit funded through CMTF. This includes federally mandated safety requirements. The unique needs of rail operations is why the Tide Light Rail system needs to be on a dedicated CMTF funding track, just like Metro and VRE in Northern Virginia.
The light rail system is currently lumped into the same program with bus systems from across Virginia. It really doesn't belong there any more than Metro Rail or Virginia Railway Express. Now is the time to address light rail specifically. We want to follow the example set in 2023 when the General Assembly unanimously approved funding for commuter rail. A modest allocation of the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund for light rail will help ensure that we can maintain and sustain the current system in a safe and reliable condition. Thank you for your support.
So Brian, we're gonna turn it over to you. RK will bring up your PowerPoint.
Great.
And look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, it's great to be with you. And also, I should say, I'm very eager to in the part of the next discussion, I think, is we also talk about needs across the Commonwealth and not just specific to HRT, of course, as we want to think and act regionally. So definitely related to WADA as well as Suffolk and other transit providers in the region, and that's with respect to overall availability of statewide funding for operations and for capital. That funding, most of Virginia transit funding, really, now I think about it, all of Virginia transit funding flows through a fund that is referred to as the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund. So I'm going to speak briefly to that this morning. And again, thank you for this opportunity to highlight one item in particular, as Mr. Harrell sort of teed it up there in the video, and that is with respect to the light rail system. If you go to the next slide. And I've just got three or four slides here. But just by way of background, and perhaps some of you have seen this before, just a few short weeks ago in this room actually was the meeting of the Hampton Roads Caucus, and Mr. Harrell at that time also shared these same items that I'm briefing you on today. So just a little bit of background: there are three rail public transit providers in Virginia. It's been this way for some time. Of course, in Northern Virginia, it's the Metro rail system there, as well as VRE, the Virginia Railway Express, and our light rail system here in Hampton Roads. Again, a primary funding source for all transit, including our rail properties, is the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund, and it should kind of goes without saying, but it's sort of like reminds me of the old Sesame Street song. One of these things is not like the other, right? Bus transit and rail transit are just very different. They have unique cost structures, unique operating characteristics, unique needs, and the General Assembly has acknowledged this repeatedly over several years, especially with respect to Metro and and respect to VRE. Not quite as much with respect to the light rail, and that is something that is coming forward in this legislative session. There'll be a House bill and a Senate bill that aim to achieve the same thing, and I'll speak to that momentarily. But as you see here, again, the Metro system is allocated 46.5% of the entire Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund is allocated to the Metro off the top. And then starting in this current fiscal year, up to 3.5% is allocated to VRE. That's based on legislation that was passed in 2023. And but if we sort of look back in the past, again, bus modes and rail modes are very different. This is not anything new. In the run up to performance-based funding in Virginia, and that's how operating funding is allocated, is based on a sort of a performance program that's referred to as the merit program. But even before merit, as far back as 2014, and at that time, even from our own region, Thelma Drake at the time was director at DRPT. There were several studies that were done and actually mandated by the General Assembly. And over again, it's been recognized that bus modes and rail modes are very different and should be treated differently. That being the case, if you go to the next slide, I think it mentions that the light rail system actually is not treated separately. Our light rail system is lumped in with all of the bus modes across Virginia, and the light rail participates in the same merit program as bus. So again, very differently than Metro, very different than VRE. And so we are bringing this forward this year to specifically address this. The recommendation is that we would treat rail properties consistently. And so we want to follow the example specifically that was just happened with VRE in 2023 and allocate a certain percentage of this funding to light rail. It really is. There's a lot of implications that are related to this, and one of them I should say is just the recognition that while we have maintained the system in a very good state of good repair, it's very reliable, as the video mentioned. Consistently over 98% on-time performance. We've been able to maintain the system in a state of good repair. We want to continue to be able to do that, and particularly in the time frame that we're in now, it's hard to believe, but we're already at that period of time where our vehicles are requiring midlife overhaul. And it is fairly significant investment to maintain these vehicles. Eventually, these vehicles will have to be replaced, and that's going to be quite a bit more of a price tag. But today through FY 2031, we're already in the midlife overhaul period, and so some of this funding would certainly be allocated to support essential state of good repair. It's we get really excited. I know I do personally, and a lot of folks think about the future and how could the light rail possibly go to other places and build out, and we could have more of an expansive network. And there's been lots of conversations in this room and elsewhere about sort of the aspirations for expanding light rail across the region. But this is really just about taking care of what we have today. Certainly want to be able to build on the future in some fashion, but this is about state of good repair of just the current system. So next slide. And yeah, just mentioning some of those costs, going back to the observation that bus and rail are just very different modes. You see some of the examples of the different types of investments that are required in maintenance, not just the vehicles, but all of the track and the overhead power systems and so forth. So there's a lot of system-wide safety and security items and technologies that require ongoing maintenance as part of state of good repair. Next slide. And so that really brings us to what we're recommending and would ask for support. I should say, on the Senate side, the chief patron is Senator Rouse. And on the House side, it is Delegate Askew. We do expect quite a few co-patrons to be joining this as the legislation is sort of making its way through the process. But what the bill would do would allocate up to 2.5% of the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund. Again, treating the rail systems in Virginia consistently. We'll continue to be held accountable, if you will. We're very we track a lot of key performance indicators, a lot of performance metrics these types of requirements for performance reporting and financial reporting would still be very much in place, as we are held accountable by the Commonwealth Transportation Board and state oversight. But at the end of the day, it's really about being able to maintain this system reliably and in a state of good repair. And I should also say this, down to the bottom here, you see very important, and I think this really leads to the next discussion as we consider other legislative items in this session, is being very mindful, and we're certainly very mindful of any allocation that comes to light rail out of the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund, potentially would have implications for funding for the rest of the transit providers in Virginia. So we want to, there's a provision that would hold harmless all other rail operators. So this really it would not have any dollar impact on any other transit providers. And we think that's very, very important. So we're pleased that there will be a hold harmless provision that's part of the implementation of this 2.5%. And again, at the end of the day, it's about ensuring cost-effective maintenance and system reliability. A failure to act would have a lot of knock-on effects, among them, as we know, even on the roadway side or in other industries, I'm sure. If you delay or defer maintenance, if you really don't take care of things as you should as you go along, it inevitably will lead to higher costs in the future. So we want to avoid those higher costs. We want to avoid any exposure to safety risk or overall effectiveness of the current system by making sure that we address the needs of the light rail, again, consistent with the way other rail properties in Virginia are being treated. So thank you, Bob.
Brian, thank you so much. Brian, before we open it up for questions and discussion, do you have an estimate about what your maintenance needs are for the tide between now and you had mentioned between now and 2031? Can you give a bit of a ballpark estimate on those needs?
Yes, and I would be glad to follow up more definitely with some any follow-up material, but the average annual cost through 2031 is about 13.5 million annually. So yeah, that's the average cost, about 13.5 to 13.9 million through average annually through 2031.
Thank you, Brian. And then Brian talked about the cost of inaction, right? So just to give you an idea, and this won't be a surprise to you, but on our road projects, we're seeing annual cost escalation of about 10 to 13%. 10 to 13%. So I would have no reason to believe that you wouldn't see the same thing with your maintenance costs increasing over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say, we've been at this for a number of years now, and so we also sort of track our needs on a longer horizon. Of course, the farther you go out, there are more unknowns in the future, but we do even, have even a 30-year 30-year assessment of what long-term needs are. So this 2.5%, while it's a very modest amount of funding, it would put us in a position where we could collaborate with RTAP in particular and get into some more of the long-term agreements to get these needs addressed. So.
Very good. So, Matt, from WADA's perspective, would you like to add any items before we open it up for a bit of a roundtable question and discussion?
Yeah, thanks, Bob, and Brian. Thanks for that. I mean, it seems reasonable. I think, as a reason, obviously, we benefit greatly from the light rail here. Selfishly, however, you did address it. It will not pull from merit, right? 'Cause that's really where I'd be concerned is we're just it's just a shell game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this 2.5% would not have a negative impact on any other provider. There is again a hold harmless provision so that if there was any determination that there could be a negative impact, that would be covered by supplemental funding. So.
The only other thing I'd offer then is it doesn't reach up into our area yet, but it's something we've talked about certainly in this room and as a region of how it might expand. You mentioned it briefly there as well. We'd just like to be able to then, if we support you on that with our own elected officials and transit day, and whenever we're up there, being able to feed a little bit more into that, right? This is one way of funding the light rail as it exists now, but in the future too, as we really expand across, fully across the region.
So Matt, on items not related to light rail, could you talk a little bit about WADA's needs and if there are any items as we sort of say, as we're talking to General Assembly members, what might be things we can be supporting for WADA as well?
So aside from what's already here, and I don't know if there's any I didn't hear any representatives from us from Suffolk.
Not today, no.
So 5311, the state has forecasted, has already signaled to us a huge drop in 5311 funds. Now we are one of the rare transit agencies that draws both urban and rural funds. So the 5311 being the rural side, though it's a smaller, significantly smaller portion of what we do receive. It's still significant enough that I am concerned about where we will be. I think the DRPT is saying 2026 will be okay, but it's after that there'll be a huge drop in 5311. So that's something I'd like to bring forward.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. So for RTAP members, any questions or discussion for either Brian and the HRT team or Matt and the WADA team from what you've heard today?
So Bob, if I may, I'm sorry, Brent, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question in terms of the parameters. You talk about 2.5% of the CMT. What would that dollar amount be in this year's budget? And you talked about, thank you for the briefing, by the way. You also talked about the unpredictability of the funding coming to light rail. And I'm not an attorney, but I always get thrown by phrases like up to 2.5%. Does the up to 2.5% really solve the unpredictability challenge that you have?
I would say, I guess to answer the second question first, I'd say, if it were not just up to, but it was a definite set 2.5, that would certainly be, probably better, more definite for sure. But in order to benefit from the full amount, we would be required to do, just as VRE is doing today, report to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, not only performance funding, but also the financial information so that can be evaluated and those allocations would occur. I think given the size of our needs, I wouldn't anticipate a future where we won't be able to demonstrate that we can fully utilize that 2.5%. So I would expect that we would get the full 2.5%. In terms of current year dollars, and again, we're really not talking about a lot of funding here. Order of magnitude is about $11 million, maybe $11 to $11.5 million. So it's really not a lot. And which is another reason why we think that, this really should be able to be favorably accepted, if you will, in the legislative session. Comparatively, if I may, just to give a sense of like that 46.5% that goes to Metro today. And I don't want to take anything away from the needs in other parts of Virginia. Like we understand there's significant needs elsewhere, but just order of magnitude, that 46.5% equates to about $220 million today. For VRE, their allocation in 2025 was 16.3 million. And that's just from this off the top. That's not including other dedicated funding to Metro. As an example, they get another $154.4 million annually as a dedicated capital funding. They get $50 million annually as part of some PREA matching funds for federal funds. And in this current budget, in the current year, they got like $69 million general appropriation. I think next year is supposed to be like an $86 million general fund appropriation. So it sort of starts to really stack up when you look at the amount of resources that are being allocated elsewhere. And we're just saying, hey, we have some needs here in Hampton Roads. Comparatively, they're quite a bit smaller, but we certainly hope it gets the attention of the members. If I may, Bob, I wanted to add one other item, and that is, this is definitely applicable across the board. There was a decrease in overall monies available for statewide operating support this year. Unfortunately for HRT, we actually received about $2 million less in funding. So it's never a good time to receive less money, but particularly as everybody is sort of recovering from the pandemic in different ways. We're still, building back and from the impacts of that. So it's never a good time to receive less funding, but that did in fact occur. So we started working very early with other stakeholders and the Virginia Transit Association. We do expect that there will be a budget amendment in this session as well that would bring some support to the statewide operating capital program. And that's something we also want to advocate strongly for, is that just the overall merit program is adequately funded. Because if that doesn't occur, then that'll just impact everybody negatively, and we wouldn't like that either. So.
Thanks, Brian. Other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Janice Taylor. I would like to know, what is the dollar amount that you have a decrease in funding right now, and what areas will it be impacted?
The decrease this year was 1.9 million, so just about $2 million, and that was a decrease just for, in HRT's case, that was just a decrease overall. We are still, I'd say, thankfully, we were able to benefit from some of the COVID relief funding, and we have been very as diligent as we can be to make those resources go as far as they could. So we were able to absorb this year some of that decreased state funding by using more of the temporary federal money. But even as those federal monies go away, again, that's just going to create another financial thing to deal with going forward. Suffolk Transit, I guess, who's not here with us today, but I know Suffolk Transit received some decreased funding as well in this current year. So it is being felt in the region the overall decrease in statewide funding.
Yes, Gary.
Yeah. Yeah, question, you know, we're talking about system maintenance here, you know, and not only system maintenance, but the component maintenance as well, in terms of funding and also in terms of maintenance protocols. You know, the more stressors that we add into a system, the more likely it's going to fail, the less reliable it's going to be. What about the unpredictability, if that's a word, associated with climate? Example, in Atlanta, we did a study on transit, rail and bus, in terms of extreme heat, you know, and the stressors added because of those sorts of climate impacts. Have you done that? And is that somehow factored into that funding allocation?
I apologize. I missed the last part, sir, where you mentioned the study in Atlanta. And what did you find there?
Yeah, well, in Atlanta, we looked at both the rail and also buses, and in terms of extreme heat, and we looked at it both at the system level and component level as well, and figured out, you know, where would be the failures occurring, you know, and how would they impact the system, and how does it affect overall reliability and such. So I was curious whether or not a similar study had been done here. Again, if we're allocating funding, and again, the more stresses we add, including climate, you know, the more unpredictability in terms of maintenance and system reliability.
I'm going to help Dr. Smith out here. Can you all hear me? So it's different, Gary, it's different by the mode. With rail, we already have re-auto tensioning of the overhead wires because they do sag in extreme heats as part of the annual budgeting process. We always monitor our track and ties for any warping or spreading of the tracks. That's also accounted for in our annual operating budget to an extent of the kind of temperatures we have today. And there are some extreme days. On bus, when we have extreme weather events such as huge flooding, hurricanes, those summer torrential downpours, we tend to protect the fleet by keeping them pretty much in the garages and putting at minimum service. So we never threaten, as the current fully loaded price of the bus is over $700,000, approaching $800,000. We don't want to put at risk any bus that it's flooded out, but you are correct. I think the bigger issue is the flooding and sea level rise, and that is a challenge. We haven't done a study in the bus yet. We are fortunate that our two operating divisions are kind of hardened in that they're a little bit higher than the surrounding areas. So Armistead Avenue in front of 18th Street, while it floods, we're kind of like a castle with a moat around us, and the equipment is safe in there. We do have contingency plans for hurricanes and snowstorms that we have a relationship with Tidewater Community College that we bring a fleet over to Virginia Beach, which is relatively speaking high ground, to protect the fleet on those kind of conditions. But we haven't done a formal study for bus yet.
And quickly here, also in terms of your maintenance approach, you know, some folks do run to failure, some folks do reliability centered, some folks do preventive and other reliability techniques. In terms of your funding and your maintenance approach, and from both the system and the component level, are we moving more towards a reliability centered model, or are we just running the failure, or are we bringing into some of those analysis techniques that help us to prevent those failures by predicting them, et cetera?
It's a great question, and I'll say we're definitely not running to failure. We have been able to stay on top of our scheduled asset maintenance cycles and sort of different assets, of course, you know, different needs. But the biggest need I just kind of come back to is the vehicles themselves. We have, starting in 2024, we entered the midlife overhaul period, and we have 9 vehicles total. And so the midlife overhaul period kind of runs through 2031. And so it is based on scheduled maintenance. And that's sort of what we're in that space right now. What we've discovered, I should say, is that while we applied and did receive some state funding to help us with the first couple of vehicles, the way that they were scheduled, in real time, the actual cost, back to Bob's earlier point, the real costs that have come back, and there's really only one vendor here at Siemens, were significantly more than what they had the placeholders had originally been. So we are experiencing in real time the actual cost escalation that Bob mentioned. We have since updated our information, to match what we expect to actually happen through 2031. And so we're planning based on the scheduled replacement needs. If we can stick to that schedule, we have every confidence that we will be able to continue to provide a reliable service like we're doing today. Again, 98, 99% on-time performance. This is the highest on-time performance of any transit mode across Virginia. So we're really proud of the quality of service. We obviously want more people to get on board. And as the economy and other things overall in the region continue to rebound and recover, and we know the future is bright in terms of increasing utilization of the system. We'll also want to make sure we keep it running very reliable through the appropriate investment.
And Brian, you mentioning it in your presentation, it was mentioned in the video, but maybe just worth us saying a third time. Just important to remember, this is the only light rail system in Virginia, correct? Right? So it's unique, it's different. It doesn't deserve to be lumped in with, as you say, conventional public transit. Brian, you had mentioned that you expect 2 patrons, Senator Rouse, Delegate Askew. Do you know if the bills have been introduced on both the House and Senate side? And Noel, I guess they wouldn't have numbers yet, but they will soon, right?
No, we're still working with the Division of Legislative Services to tweak some of the language, but we expect the bills to be introduced soon. But we don't have numbers yet.
Okay, so I'll come back to the ask of RTAP. This is where your voice is going to be very powerful. But first, I want to be certain we all have good understanding of everything. Yes, sir.
Hey, I just want to say congratulations on the 20% increase in bus and light rail attendance. That's huge. One of the things that we think about as the Gen Z Commission is that over 40% of Gen Zers are going into the workforce without an ID of any kind to be able to drive. And you were talking too as well that you're hoping to get those numbers up. So I was curious if anyone has done any sort of understanding or study on the Gen Z adoption specifically in the light rail and the bus.
Yes, well, I would say not specifically to Gen Z, but we actually do recurring market research and surveys that consider our ridership as a whole and how we can better target through marketing and other programs and attract more ridership. An example of that's the Student Freedom Pass. Everybody 17 and under can ride for free. And we also have other, targeted fare programs. But we do what we refer to as an origin and destination survey. It's very, very rich in data. And Ray, would you like to speak to the O&D survey?
Great question. We did any federal transit agency that receives federal funding for operating assistance required every 3 or 4 years to do a system-wide, statistically valid origin and destination survey of its ridership of people who use transit. The typical questions that we ask, and we just completed one in November of 2023. For us, that's pretty recent because the last one was 2016. We held off on doing one because of the pandemic because things were kind of askew then. What we learned between 2016 and 2023 is the users of transit have gotten older. The cohort of 18 to 34 was the biggest cohort in 2016, young people going to work. Well, guess what the pandemic taught young people to do? You can work effectively from home at least part of the week. So what we found is the 18 to 34 demographic is no longer the largest cohort of users of transit. It moved from that to 42 to 60. So the 4 to 5 day a week rider is now in that age. It's still a working person, man or woman, They are older because young people are more comfortable, and I hate to make this broad characterization, but apparently, at least from the responses we got, the users of transit, they're comfortable working at least part of the time at home and using transit part-time. We still have a very dedicated ridership base in which nearly 78% of the people who use transit have no other choice for mobility, no household, no car in the household. But they've gotten older, at least, and I think that's a pandemic effect. I think it'll drop back down as we see the last residual effects of the pandemic. So I'm happy to share any of that data. We can break it down by zip code, by city, by route, even if you
I'd
want.
love all of that, first of all, and just one quick follow-up question on that, which is, you said that you've got these 20% increase year over year. I'm curious what's driving that increase, if there's any understanding of what is converting.
I believe you, speaking of ridership growth,
Yeah.
yes, sir. I'm fairly confident personally, Ray, I defer to you, the expert. But the advent of the 757 Express program, which, of course, creates opportunity for new 15-minute service on our bus routes. But it's not just about the routes too. I think a lot of our customer amenities and other things we're doing is making the system more accessible. But at the end of the day, it's probably reliable service. If we can't provide reliable service, we can't attract those riders. And we have seen a new ability to implement some high frequency service on major corridors, right?
So just to piggyback on that, the 757 Express program was funded by the 2020 General Assembly money that brings 15-minute service right now, peak period, on 13 regional backbone routes. We've implemented 3 of them to date. The only thing holding us back now is the lack of bus operators. But those 3 have averaged anywhere between 34 and I think I've seen as close to 68% increase year over year ridership since 15-minute service has come on board. Most of our other routes are still at 30 and 60 minutes, mostly because we're still well short of over 100 operators. The year over year, it's easy to do better than the year before because 21 and 22 were low periods of ridership because of the pandemic. We're practically back to fiscal year 19 ridership levels, which is a really good story. Took us a little bit longer than some of the bigger cities in the country, but we're almost back to FY19, and that's why we're seeing really positive ridership growth back.
Awesome. I'll ask some more questions later. I appreciate that.
Dr. Case?
Yeah, just to respond, a few years ago, we analyzed, focusing on Gen Z, but did a generational analysis of usage of transit and bikes and that kind of thing, alternative transportation, and I can get that to you if you would like.
So one of the things that's interesting is what's been described is obviously we need to maintain and we need to maintain the quality of the current operations, right? Mayor Glover, not to call on you cold here, but you and I have had conversations and you've expressed your vision at this table about expansion of light rail. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind just talking about some of the things you've challenged us to think about as a TPO in that regard, sir.
Well, thank you, Bob. I think when we think about moving people, particularly in a city like Portsmouth and with the challenges we have with our population, it's important that we think about the expansion of light rail perhaps to areas such as Portsmouth. And we have discussed perhaps ways that could be attained. It will take a little bit of innovation and a little bit of thinking out of the norm, but based on what we know to be so in the future of our region, as we continue to grow and be that region that will continue to focus on the maritime industry and putting people back to work, I think it's critically important for how we look at this going forward and how we will move people in all of our cities. I think light rail has the potential to be the answer for that. And so we are going to be very intentional and deliberate as we move forward.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So before we talk about roles for the RTAP as a group and as you all as individual organizations, any other questions that you have related to what you've heard today?
I do have a question.
Yes, Dr. K.
One of the things that you mentioned in your presentation was considerations and thoughts for expanding light rail, and thank you for what you said, Mayor. Is there a timeline? I recently moved to the city of Portsmouth, and one of the things that I do notice is there's quite a few Gen Zers in Portsmouth. I'm from Chicago, so let me just share my little bit of ignorance. I'm still learning a lot about Hampton Roads. Um, I do notice that there seems to be a large population of Gen Zers, but also what we call baby boomers in Portsmouth. There's like this split, at least in my observation. And so I'm wondering, considering the study that you mentioned, tell me your name again, please. Randy? Ray, okay, thank you. That Ray mentioned, was there consideration in that study for where Gen Zers live? And then also, is there consideration for, given where they live, expanding the light rail so that that Gen Z population that we're unfortunately in Hampton Roads has been losing can get to work utilizing the light rail?
Really, really great questions. I would ask Bob, I'd be happy to come and show the results of the origin and
That'd be
destination
great.
survey. With that in mind, in terms of the age demographics and how they use transit. Remember, the survey was only of the people that use transit today, so it didn't survey non-riders. But I could tell you about the people who use transit, why they're using it, where they're going, frequency of use, age, household income. We have all that data, and mode, and sex, male, female, whatever. And if they got to the bus stop by walking, or if they took a micromobility, I have all that information. As far as light rail goes, and you are new to the region, and Mayor Glovin knows this best, I've been doing the fight for light rail since I arrived in this region in 1997. Bob knows that. We've had one success and many failures. And the way light rail is funded is through a complex process. We funded the TIDE, the 7.4 miles, through a competitive grant process that Congress allocates called the Capital Investment Grant Program, New Starts, for those who remember, which pays up to 50% of the cost to construct the project. The rest of it is met with city, the way it's structured here currently, by a mixture of the city that wants it and the state. The state resources right now are limited to approximately $40 million for an enhancement. So that basically means the average price of a light rail line of 7 miles is about $1 billion, double track, $1 billion. So the feds pick up half of that. State picks up 40 million, not to scare you, Mayor Glover, because I love you dearly. The onus would be for the city to pick up the difference to construct that, unless we change the structure of the cost allocation agreement. That's always been the biggest problem. HRT does not have a capital program to fund these kind of large projects. The way we were constructed in 1999 in the merger was that each city, when they decide they want to do something, is responsible for that cost, whether it be operating or capital, outside of what HRT is able to garner through whatever competitive grant program. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but that is the truth right now, how we fund light rail projects. The unique challenge for Portsmouth, if we want to connect to the existing line, is how do we cross that body of water, the eastern branch, the Elizabeth River? You got two options. You can use Campostella Bridge, which I'm not quite sure could support light rail tracks. We'd have to do structural analysis, or a new crossing, which would super drive the cost up. So what I'm thinking is perhaps you're suggesting is a self-contained light rail alignment within the city of Portsmouth that still relies on the ferry to make that connection across the water. But we're more than happy to do any study, put a planning level cost estimate, and do the engineering design. But as you know, we're doing one now in Chesapeake, looking at mostly bus rapid transit. We've done several to Virginia Beach 3 times, and 3 times the beach has rejected it. So Norfolk we are in the middle of a study doing the environmental impact statement for a 2-mile extension to connect to the redevelopment of the Military Circle Mall area. That came in 2 years ago to planning level estimate of $440 million for just 2 miles. two stations, one at Centera Lee and the last one at the redevelopment of Military Circle Mall. I'm sure since 2 years have gone by in the pandemic, those numbers are going to be adjusted again. But we still have to apply to Congress. It's a competitive process. For every HRT or WADA, there's 1,000 others in the agency all competing for that limited pot of a highly competitive program. So only the strongest survive, which means the best ridership at the lowest cost per mile and the lowest operating cost with stability and reliability of the operating funds once you build it. Because that's the other thing that Dr. Smith talked about. Congratulations, Norfolk, you built light rail. Guess what? For the next 35 to 50 years, you're paying that every year, that O&M costs, operating maintenance costs. We're seeking now funding to help offset Norfolk's burden. Those are the hard realities of light rail. That's why so many agencies around the country are moving to rubber tire solution like bus rapid transit that doesn't have the overhead hardware, traction power substations, $8 million vehicles. I mean, those light rail vehicles are very expensive, but love to study. I made my career studying light rail, but so I hope that answers some of your questions.
And Ray, that really good points, and it's important to understand the environment we operate within. But I think what Ray mentioned is something that you see many communities doing. And Dr. K, to your point, if you can understand who is moving where they want to go, and when they want to get there, maybe light rail is too expensive. But perhaps bus rapid transit, you've heard our friends of HRT and WADA talk about micro transit, and other types of connections become much more feasible approaches in terms of helping our community interconnect with one another and move around the community. And I think that's the value of this group is what is our vision and what are those opportunities,
Absolutely.
right, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Yes.
I just wanted to say, we have, the Gen Z Commission does have down to essentially the zip code data on where all Gen Zers are. So paired probably with that study, we could get a very, very clear picture of where they're moving to as well. And yeah, I'd love to connect afterwards.
Any other questions, comments? Brian?
Well, just a comment, I'll say, and I may certainly be speaking out of turn here, but I'm willing to venture and go into this space a little bit. And that is, I guess I think is, very relevant for this group in particular, that I know there's also, and there's absolutely needs for secondary roads and highways and so forth. There was a lot of very robust discussion in this room where the decision makers have I think are moving forward with the concept, and perhaps will be in legislation this year, that would set up this framework to be funded in the future, but set up a framework for new funding that could address some very important roadway needs across the region. That's one person's opinion. Very, very important. Those are absolutely, a lot of needs are there, and there's no real immediate view on how otherwise you would get the resources that are necessary to meet those needs. I would just add for consideration, perhaps, as that conversation continues to evolve and mature, and eventually there will be some new monies, that transit also be considered in that conversations in some way, shape, or form, because absolutely we could look at micro transit, we could look at other new innovative services and so forth. It's all going to cost some money. So we do need to, I would just put that out there. I think it's relevant for this group especially, that to think and act regionally from a very multimodal perspective, especially if you're going to do something as significant as create an entirely new funding program for transportation.
Thanks, Brian. Yes, Jen.
Again, once, this may be not the proper place to ask this. What about partnering with other corporations, the cruise ships, and the casinos to see if they want to invest in us for the future, to get monies from them?
Good. Love you, Janice. Those are all great opportunities, especially with the casino coming online right at the footprint of the station at Harbor Park and the casino in Portsmouth. I will tell you from my experience in the days when I was a consultant and I worked in Las Vegas, those casinos, there were 4 of them, funded a bus rapid transit because they wanted their patrons to get to the casino. So the opportunity is there. HRT has dipped its little toe in the water in looking in terms of partnership for naming rights, for advertising. But certainly this is an opportunity for us at least to talk to the casino management to see what they would be interested in. And there are other opportunities with the private sector. We don't have a great depth of experience as an agency to date, but certainly a lovely idea and one that I would love to pursue.
And Ray, if I can follow up on that, many of you know from my funny accent that I came from Pennsylvania, right? So I was the planning director for the Center Region Council of Governments around Penn State University for 20 years. The model in central Pennsylvania is that Penn State University operates the campus loop. The campus loop goes through downtown State College. It serves the community. They were a funding partner for the loop that went through the downtown urban area. And in the land development process, the development community contributed to operational expenses for routes. Walmart, Target, Dick's Sporting Goods. I could go on and on. Wegmans. I could go on and on with some of the Janice, some of the corporations we work with in past lives, right? So I think now what I think becomes difficult though is I think that's difficult for HRT to lead the way on that request, right? I think it takes community partnerships and groups like this to help lead the way on that. But I do think with our representation from our chambers of commerce here on this group, perhaps that's a conversation that we could begin to crack the door open on. It's not going to be an easy one, but it starts with discussions that maybe we could begin to have. I want to be certain we save enough time for the important item, but I think, Noel, we're probably getting to the point where the asks. So I'll be with Noel a lot up at the General Assembly, not as much as Noel will be up there, but I'll try to be up there a day or so a week. Noel, what I'd like to talk about, perhaps could you talk about the Transit Advocacy Day, and then we can talk about how this group could begin to get involved with that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bob. The Virginia Transit Association is sponsoring a Transit Advocacy Day on Monday, January 27th. And we've done this. This will be the 4th year I've participated in it. It's a wonderful day for the community and all of our supporters to come and represent your various organizations and cities. It's a packed day. We have briefings in the morning. I will schedule meetings with legislators throughout the day. There's a reception that evening. But I want to let you know that's not the only opportunity. And we would welcome RTAP to come whenever anyone is coming to Richmond otherwise, or if you want to make a trip to come to Richmond to support the HRT and other transit initiatives. I have my business cards. I'm going to leave them on the table out there. Just let me know when you're coming. I'm happy to schedule your meetings, accompany you, do anything to support any effort you might, you can come and help. I'd really like to offer that up and encourage RTAP and in any capacity, any organization you're with to come up and help support us, because it really does make a huge difference.
So Noel, what I'd like to propose is that I'll work, Pavitra and I will work with Noel, since Pavitra has the belt, right? And we should know, I think in the next week or so, what the bill numbers will be.
Yes, and that's something else I wanted to add. I'm happy, and I'm actually working on a draft support letter that I would like to distribute through the RTAP to send out once we get the bill number, so that anyone can send a support letter to their legislator, to the appropriators, to the transportation committees on the House and Senate sides. These bills will go to the transportation committees first. Then they'll go to appropriations and on the House and Senate Finance and Appropriations in the Senate.
And that's where this group can have, as you've always done in the past, can have a huge impact. So I'd like to, Noel, I'd love to work with you on talking points where we would be able to send to the RTAP members 5 or 6 talking points related to the proposal. Matt, I will include in those talking points not only the support for HRT and what you heard about the need for maintenance funding for the light rail. But Matt, thank you for bringing up the importance of the 5311 program for rural programs and adequate funding for all three of our transit systems. So what, Noel, we could work up those talking points, and then in addition, we could send you potential form letters that you could take and modify to be your own. We have diverse representation here in the RTAP, and just as we've always done across all these groups, ask you, and we will send you the contacts for our Hampton Roads Caucus and the other critical committees Noel's talked about. Letters to our caucus members letting them know that you support this transit funding is really important voice for them to hear, just as you've always done. The talking points that we'll provide you, the General Assembly members live in our community. You see them at the General Assembly, you see them here. We'll give you talking points. You can engage with them on your support for these bill numbers and the other transit funding needs. And then myself, what I would like to do, and I'll ask for a motion in a second from the RTAP in a minute, Pavitra and I will actually write up correspondence from the RTAP that we'll provide to our General Assembly members as well. So this is a chance for you to really jump in there and get engaged. And then as we draw closer to January 27th, as Noel said, it's a long day, but it's okay. You don't have to be up there the whole day. If you can just get up there from like 10 to noon and talk to a couple people, that will help. But we'll make you aware of that opportunity as well. Does that sound like a good plan, Noel?
It does. Thank you so much.
But first, before we write a letter on behalf of the RTAP, I want to be certain that you'd be comfortable. As you can imagine, they get a lot of letters up there, so being succinct and brief is important, right? But I would like to propose that RTAP authorize Pavitra and I to write a letter that could go out under my signature on your behalf, supporting the funding for the maintenance of our Tide light rail system as described by HRT, but also requesting adequate funding for our Section 5311 program, and also stressing the need for stable and adequate funding needs for all three of our transit systems in Hampton Roads. Could and I do have the umbrella to do that because it is consistent with our regional legislative agenda, so I wouldn't have to go back to our boards. But could I ask for a motion authorizing us to send that correspondence on behalf of the RTAP?
So moved.
Second.
So moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. So Noel, I'll be working with you and we'll get a packet together and get it out to everybody, probably over the next week, right, Noel? All right, awesome. All right, Amy, we're warmed up. Okay, at your last meeting, you asked for a briefing on the status of paratransit services in our region. So Amy Brazil from Hampton Roads Transit is with us today. So Amy, thanks for being with us.
No, thank you for having me again. As I mentioned, Amy Brazil, Director of Contracted Services and Operational Analytics with HRT. I oversee all of our modes that are operated by a contractor. That's everything basically that's not bus or light rail. I've presented to this group our microtransit updates and Base Express. I also oversee ferry services, and today I'm giving you an update on our paratransit service. This is the same presentation that we give to our community outreach folks, and there's a lot of information in here, and I promise I'm going to read every single word of it. Just kidding. Let's see if this thing works. Awesome. What is paratransit service? I am going to read some of this. It was very well written by one of my staff. So, all right, paratransit service is a complimentary, meaning enhanced, not free, service that works side by side with our fixed route transit services as demand response, in which an eligible customer must reserve a trip in advance. Complimentary services is not complimentary or free, and there is a fare required for each ride. That's the same as our fixed route transit service. Paratransit service exists and is federally mandated because of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. People with disabilities are entitled to the same public transportation opportunities that everyone else uses and enjoys. Hampton Roads Transit Paratransit service is a shared ride service. The service that we provide is an origin to destination and not a door-to-door service, unless it's requested. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. All right, what is our fixed route service? This system is the most affordable means of transportation available to the public and is commonly known as a bus system, but here in Hampton Roads, it also includes our ferry service and our Tide Light Rail. Persons with disabilities may qualify for half fares. Any senior over the age of 65 automatically qualifies to ride the fixed route service for half fares. Paratransit certified clients can ride the fixed route for free with an HRT issued picture ID. All of our fixed route vehicles are wheelchair accessible, and you do not need to make a reservation for this particular mode of service. So currently we have 116 HRT owned paratransit service vehicles. They include the Ford Cutaways, Ford Transits, and Chrysler Voyagers. 32 of the vehicles have been received over the past few months. So we've got 32 brand new ones. We also partner with the taxi service Z-Trip, and we also use TNC operators, they're like your Uber and Lyft, to help to supplement some of the service. All right, here's the words. I promise I'm not going to read it all really. All right, eligibility. To become certified, you have to go through one of our third-party vendors. This is ADA Ride to begin the application process. This is all done online or through phone system. There are two parts of this. It's the customer portion that they fill out and also a professional verification form by a doctor or someone who's certified to fill that out. Then there's three categories that you can be eligible for. One is unconditional. This means that that you can't navigate our bus or ferry system, and your situation is not going to get any better. Conditional eligibility is people that can navigate our public route system, our fixed route system, on a conditional basis. So if you are in a wheelchair and on a normal day, you can navigate our system, but say today it's snowing and you can't use it that day. So you would be issued a conditional eligibility. Then there's temporary. This is one who maybe you had hip replacement or you had some kind of situation for a temporary period of time, or you're coming here to visit and you have paratransit certification in another city, you can use this service temporarily. Our service overview. So paratransit services serves the cities of Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Portsmouth, Chesapeake, Hampton, Newport News, and a small sliver of Suffolk. Paratransit service operates during the same hours of our fixed route system of the bus service. In addition, paratransit not only authorized to service locations, let me start over. So pickup and drop off locations must be within a 3/4 mile. So this was discussed at our last meeting here. The service zone, it's only within 3/4 of a mile of that fixed route service. This distance is currently calculated in our scheduling software by Google Maps and by using the GPS coordinates of the address requested. The time of service is the same as the fixed route service within each city. So whatever the bus route runs in the city of Chesapeake, that's when our paratransit service runs as well. Paratransit service will pick up clients at a scheduled pickup address and drop them off at the scheduled drop-off address. Other than a cancellation of a trip, changes cannot be made that same day. All right, so this is our paratransit service area. You can note the gray pockets of no coverage in the city of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach, and also Virginia Beach has some seasonal service. This is our current paratransit. This is the fixed route polygons and the 3/4 of a mile outside of that bus route. You note the section in red, that is a seasonal route in the city of Virginia Beach. We do not have that service in the wintertime. This only runs during the seasonal, so there is no service for that red area in the wintertime. Service requirements. Drivers must exit the vehicle to ensure the client's board and get off safely. If requested, this has to be requested prior to, they can assist a customer from the door to the vehicle. The drivers must identify themselves and verify that they have the correct passenger. Drivers are not required to assist in the operation of motorized mobility devices or act as a personal care attendant. Each certified rider is limited to 2 grocery bags, just like our bus service, or similar size carry-on packages, and drivers are not required to carry those packages. This is a shared ride service, just like all of our other modes. So someone can be picked up and dropped off while you're en route to your destination. So we try to limit our paratransit ride time to 90 minutes. We do a really, really great job at that, but there are times, you know, if you're coming through the tunnel or we've got plenty of construction underway, so that could exceed 90 minutes from time to time, but it's not very often that that happens. Reservations can be made up to 7 days in advance, but it has to be made by 5 o'clock the day before your ride. The pickup window is 30 minutes. The rider needs to be prepared to travel during that confirmed pickup window. The driver will not arrive at an exact time, but sometime within that window. Once the vehicle arrives, they let you know that they're there, and you have 5 minutes to load the vehicle before they move on to the next customer. Clients they are allowed to cancel within 2 hours prior to their pickup without a violation. And we do have a subscription service. You can book your rides up to 7 days in advance. This is really good if you work Monday through Friday and you have a set schedule of times that you need to be picked up or dropped off. You can create a subscription. If a ride is late, if that vehicle arrives 1 minute past that window, you are not obligated to take that ride. You can choose to take it or not take that ride without a penalty. Fares and tickets. Our fares are $3.50 one way, the same as a bus fare. They can use cash. They can also purchase a 10-trip book for $35. Cash and ticket fares are collected when they are picked up. You can also use a credit card, but the driver cannot take credit cards. You have to do that through the online portal. And your companion, if you take a companion with you, you are allowed to take someone with you. They have to pay a fare unless they are a certified PCA, which is a personal care attendant that's assigned to you when you sign up for the service, or a child under the age of 17 can ride for free as well. Using the service. As I mentioned, you can bring along one PCA. That has to be done while your account's being set up. You can bring one companion who also pays a fare. And children accompanying a client ride for free, as they do on a fixed route. But in addition, riders on a trip must be scheduled in advance, and we ask that you book no more than 3 people with you. All trained service animals are allowed. Known clients with service animals will only be transported in the vans. We will not send a sedan for them. Currently, we only have 2 types of service animals that are qualified, and that is a dog and a miniature horse. It's a true story. Not kidding. We haven't had anyone bring a miniature horse yet, but they're allowed to if they have one. Clients must use a seatbelt in the front seat. We do ask that you wear one in the back seat, but you're not obligated under Virginia law. All right, rider technology. So before your ride comes, 24 hours before your ride comes, you're going to get a notification that you have a ride scheduled for tomorrow. And then you'll get another reminder between 5 to 15 minutes before that ride is picking you up. That gives you a couple of minutes, but you should not rely on that technology. We know technology is not always 100%, and you should be downstairs or outside waiting for your ride in that 30-minute window. If a ride is early, you are not required to get on board until your window opens, but once that window opens, you have 5 minutes to get on board. Like I mentioned before, If that ride is 1 minute past that pickup window, you do not have to take that ride. No shows and late cancellation. So missing part or canceling late may result in suspension of your paratransit service. You will receive notification if you have excessive violations, and you can be suspended from our service for a period of time if you continue violating that. You do have a right to appeal if you do receive those violations, and we look at those case-by-case basis. In the event of a declared emergency, HRT will respond to same-day trips. Like I mentioned before, we don't offer that right now, but we do have the capability of doing same-day trips in the event of an emergency situation. Only the request related to an evacuation or the emergency situation will be considered. Following that emergency, HRT will do everything they can on the same-day trip request to get you back home. Personal trips to the grocery store, to the pharmacy, things like that are not considered emergency, and people should plan accordingly for those trips. We do have an app. So this is the phone app. This is available on Apple and Google Play. It's the Hampton Roads Transit Paratransit app. Only one phone at a time can be logged in. So if you're someone who cares for someone who takes the service, only one person can be logged into the system at a time. It does identify your location and things like that. So that's why we prefer to have the customer actually using the service using the app. This is what the phone app looks like. You can log in, create your account. You can do everything. You can book your rides. You can see where your vehicle is, just like Uber, Lyft. You can see your vehicle coming. You can see who's coming for you, the vehicle number, all the information that you need to take that ride. We also have a web portal. This is what it looks like if you're logging on from a computer. If you're someone who is a caretaker who's watching someone who's taking the service, you can also log online through a computer to see where those rides are and create the bookings and things like that. I think this is my last slide. It is. It's kind of painless, right?
Thanks, Amy. Any questions? Thoughts? Yes.
You have to go through a certification. So unless they're certified, they cannot use paratransit service.
If I may, that's a great question, and obviously up in Williamsburg, huge, the tourism industry. If they're qualified one other place, they can be accepted to ride temporarily while they are visiting, but they need to show proof, and that would be the certification she's referring to there. Any idea, Amy, on what the numbers have looked like? I know WADA, we've experienced an 84% increase in ADA ridership since 2016 to 23. It seems to have leveled off in the past year, but it's the one service I'm really nervous about.
I would agree with you. And no, we have not leveled off. In fact, in November, we hit record ridership of over 40,000 rides that 1 month. But on the good side of that, we were running at about a 94 to 95% on-time performance during that month as well. So we're handling it well, but we are seeing those increases month over month. And certainly this past year, it has, we hit a record in September, one in October, and again in November.
I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to kind of finish that point. So when we're talking Gen Zs, what does it look like in the future? We're doing our own study in the up the peninsula way in the historic triangle. It is the aging population. Very concerned about whether we'll be able to meet that demand. The increase in the Gen Zers really more we saw with the students of the College of William and Mary. But yeah, it's only going to get, we think, much heavier demand, trying to see how we get ahead of that curve.
Yep. And for those that don't know, the reason he said it makes them nervous to see the increase in ridership, this is the most expensive mode that we operate. And with having the increase in ridership, that's what makes us a little nervous. We do have a very large paratransit contract, and the cost per rider is the highest out of all of our modes.
Steve?
Yeah, I really appreciate the service that you provide, and the way that you do it is excellent. Could you explain a little bit about the 3/4 mile parameter and how people access that and don't?
Sure. So that is done by geofencing. So we create that 3/4 mile. We work with our vendor to identify all of the bus routes, and to the very spot, to the very block, we do that 3/4 mile. So anyone within a 3/4 mile, as the crow flies, if you're within that 3/4 mile from a fixed route, the service is available. If you happen to be out, you can still qualify for the service, but you have to get within that 3/4 mile. So if it's a block from your home, maybe there's a school close by that's within that 3/4 mile, you can travel to that school and use the service.
So if I live within 3/4 mile, the paratransit come pick me up from my home
It sure will.
Yes.
and then take you to any commission office, or is there requirements on where you can get to?
As long as it's within that 3/4 mile from a fixed route. So you can travel anywhere that's 3/4 mile within a, it can travel out away from that 3/4 mile, but your origin and your destination have to be in that 3/4 mile.
So the senior services, we provide a similar service, pre to post 16 plus, door to door. And we are already seeing such a significant increase that we're trying to figure out how do we handle this now.
There you go, sorry. So we're trying to figure out how do we handle this now? So I feel your pain, in any way that we can work together in order to help more people be able to access the service, whether on your side, our side, or combined, would be really helpful for the community.
Absolutely.
Amy, Bob, I'm sorry. It's a great topic. I just got to jump in. So we were doing the same thing up the peninsula. We had an agreement with similar agencies. We have a great working relationship. The partnership and sharing rides or sharing scheduling rides became a much harder task to achieve for a multitude of reasons, different standards on who qualifies for a ride, for example, never mind, geographic areas covered, and then scheduling software. But when there's still that coordination piece, at the very least, can be very helpful for the community.
So let's
Start back in the corner, then go to Gary and Janice.
Yes, my question is, how are you all advertising for the paratransit service?
It's on our website. But as I mentioned, we want everyone to know that this service is available, but we don't necessarily want to continue increasing our ridership. We do work with the Independent Center. We work with a lot of companies that work with the disabled community. But as far as advertising, we don't do any special advertising for paratransit service.
Gary, coming your way.
Yeah, quickly here. Again, back to that 3/4 mile radii. What's the basis for that? I mean, is that industry? It seems like if grandma lives out a mile, she's gonna be out of luck. So what's the basis for that? Is it industry standard?
FTA.
I'm sorry?
The FTA says that we have to do the
FTA?
3/4. Yes.
So is that the minimal
Yes.
stand? Okay, so you could go out beyond that. You can say our standard is a mile. Our standard is a mile and a half, but you're sticking with the STA regulatory standard of 3/4 mile, which is the minimum standard.
That's correct.
So Ray, did you want to provide some info on
Yeah, I'm looking at Amy. Gary, it's a great question. You're right. At a minimum, it's 3/4 mile on either side of the fixed route. If we expand that bandwidth, the cost is passed on to each of the cities that pay for it. This is the acceptable level we've carried since 1999 that the cities feel comfortable in funding. Again, the cities pay nearly 40% of all operating costs. So this would be a burden to the 6 cities that make up our district. So we're doing the federal required minimum, which is 3/4 mile. But the answer is yes, you could make them larger, but each city would have to agree to it.
Janice?
I would like to piggyback on to Ms. Brazil's presentation. I was a past chairman of the Paratransit Advisory Committee, and right now service quality and outreach. And to the lady that asked the question about the hotels, HRT has a wonderful program in which I took advantage of. I had to go be a speaker at Great Wolf Lodge for the Stroke Symposium for Centera, and they partnered me with WADA. So I connected with other cities through paratransit to use my disability and my paratransit rights as a person here to use other cities and other services. So that was one good advantage and one point that you can use. And also regarding tickets, I was also worked with different corporations and box corporations if you wanted to buy paratransit. On the website, it's listed to where you can buy those paratransit tickets and when it's listed by cities. And let's see, where's my last point? I lost it. But that was basically it. If I can find it again, I'd like have permission to insert. But it's a wonderful service and entertainment. I did a blog with Thomas Becker from HRT, and he interviewed several people about the benefits of paratransit. I listed more information. Mine was more extensive, like entertainment, and to avoid isolation, especially during the time of COVID. That was very important for the people in the community that are most at risk. So from there, you go to doctor's appointment, entertainment, you can go to the gym. I mean, you can use for a large variety of reasons outside of medical. And to Mr. Zola's point, we partnered with Senior Services of Eastern Virginia with Coastal Care, which was in a Z-Trip for the rides to the polls with HRT. So we coordinated that through the League of Women Voters, Paratransit, and HRT with your organization to ensure rides for people that could not get to the polls. We worked in that program. Hopefully we'll work again coming this November. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I've got.
Yes, sir.
Just had a question about autonomy. How much is that being looked at? And I'd push that to the bus folks as well. How much is that being looked at regionally and at the state level? I know federally they're kind of looking at it.
I'm going to let Ray speak on that.
So you talk about autonomous vehicles, driverless vehicles. I was part of the National Autonomous Vehicle Consortium that was held a couple of years ago that hooked up transit agencies around the country with the providers of the technology services. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, there's a state law that says if anyone chooses to do autonomous vehicles, you still have to have a human being behind the wheel. It can't truly be unattended. It doesn't have to be a commercial driver's license. It has to be somebody behind the wheel. What we've learned in the national consortium is that autonomous vehicles right now with the technology that's available now, which is a bunch of sensors and cameras on all over the vehicles, do well in speeds under 25 miles an hour. Human beings are an irrational lot and unpredictable. We dart out between parked cars. We take chances threatening 90-ton light rail vehicles by running across the tracks. On the highway, I don't want to tell you what we do, but we cut people off and give them the finger or whatever. But essentially, in speeds that approach 30, 35 miles, 40 miles an hour, i.e., let's say 264, it can't predict our irrational behavior as well as it does at the slower speed. So as far as this agency was concerned, HRT, when we were part of the consortium, we chose not to move forward with the pilot demonstration of autonomous vehicles because our fixed route, our 69 bus routes operate in a variety of environments. While you might look at the Route 11 on Colonial Place and say, oh, that's going less than 25 miles an hour. Most of the routes go well above 35 miles an hour. And we were not comfortable with the risk, with the additional insurance, and the technology, which will probably accelerate. This is exponential, and every year it's twice, the technology gets twice as better. It was pointed out by our chief technology officer that you buy these vehicles equipped with autonomous sensors, in 2 years they'll be antiquated, you have to rebuy them all. So we thought to wait and sit back a little bit. Also, there's some legislation that we'd have to look at about that requirement for a human being exactly what does that mean to be behind the wheel. So we did participate in the national consortium. We said we did a pass on the pilot because there's some grant money available. Michigan, Minnesota, and a couple other properties chose to participate, but we deemed it too great a risk. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks. That answers it. I was just curious, like how often that's going to be reviewed and so forth. And you hit it around every 2 years, it's getting better and better. So.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Yes.
I
Dr.
just
Russell?
have a comment to say that the Paris Transit drivers are well trained. They're very patient. Sometimes I sit and watch them, even at shopping centers. And that, is word of mouth. And this is why maybe more increase, because they're courteous, patiently waiting for those people. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, thank you so much. Appreciate it. So we always wrap up our meeting with just a quick around the table. You are not required to provide any input, but what we do is give everybody about 15 to 20 seconds. If there's maybe an experience you've had with transit, maybe if there's an item that or an idea you have related to transit, maybe it's just something you've experienced, or maybe it's something from your organization that you'd like to share. We would like to give everybody that opportunity. I'll just start off. When my granddaughters come down, they live in Richmond, and my son brings them down with his wife. They want to go ride the train. They want to ride the light rail. So that's part of our holiday experience. So we went out Newtown Road Station, put my 8-year-old and 5-year-old granddaughters on the light rail, took them downtown, walked down to the ferry, took them over the ferry. Mayor Glover's not here. We went to the Commodore. You would have thought they thought we took them to New York City. They thought it was super fun. So that was my transit experience over the holidays. Pavitra, you and Rob.
Well, I don't have a transit experience to match that. So the only update I really want to give, but in the transit theme, you will hear at the next meeting, Department of Rail and Public Transit, they couldn't be here today, but they wanted us to kind of point out the Virginia Breeze, the Tidewater route. They're studying it. So it's the east-west connection between Virginia Beach and Harrisonburg. That's a route that they've been studying. Dr. Rob Case has worked with some of our localities to identify potential stops. DRPT is still in the planning stages. They wanted to give a heads up that they'll be back to come and talk about this route. And the Piedmont route, I believe, is one of the ones with the most stops. I'm not sure we're going to have as many stops, but what they told us was they will definitely want to come back, hear input from RTAP as this route details are getting finalized. So.
Well, for mine, I want to mention kudos to the trolleys for over the holidays at Virginia Beach. They treated us well. We were in there, and even though it was cold, we were able to wave to the group out there, and it was beautifully decorated, and we took group pictures. So kudos to the trolley.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that in Virginia Beach, we're piloting a program where we're putting community health workers on the buses to support folks that are in need of health education. And so we're piloting that, and it's been going really well. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
Great, thank you. Gary? Yeah, quickly here. With the DC on Amtrak, came back today on Amtrak to the new Newport News facility. I was early both times. So kudos to Amtrak and Transit.
I'm going to send the rest in the email. I want to touch again to revisit the departments of philanthropy hitting various corporations to tap into it so we can be on their budget, on their radar for the end of the year. We missed the opportunities. I have friends that work for the corporations that said they had untapped resources and money for 2024. So I don't want to miss the opportunity. And quickly, I say signage on bus routes. More international, global, and banking and investment firms are coming to this area, like Chase Bank, Morgan Stanley. We need to tap into there and also put ads on our buses and whatnot. And I'm glad the gentleman's here from Norfolk Airport. because I was going to have you on my list to call you to see if we can work with you on funding with transportation, and not to put Commissioner City Councilwoman on the spot, Dr. Russ Hammond, if you're still the Vice President of Tourism. So you have a great person right here. And I was thinking of other areas, which I'll put in the email. Oh, the auto show. If we can display a vehicle while we have that there, that may draw a buzz. Thank you.
I took the public transportation today here and as well this morning. So I just want to say I grew up in New York, and it's I can tell by your accent. I love public transportation, but I really do want to know more about the Z story in that. You know, the future. I hear a lot Gen Z people say we want better public transportation, and I'm a little confused because I'm like, hey, public transportation is actually pretty good here. So I'm curious to learn more about that story and how we can help shift that story. And also lastly too, hey, you know, I just came from the Norfolk Airport. First of all, it's beautiful. And secondly, we need to get a bus there because it's like, I had to pay $100 for an Uber to get home. And I'm like, this is ridiculous.
That's a good segue. Again, my second day on the job at the airport. I actually did a skill bridge for the last couple months, as you know. So I got acquainted with the airport and all the challenges. I've been in this region since my family and I, the Navy brought us here in '99. So I'm quite familiar from New York City, actually, originally. So I grew up using mass transit, subways, and buses since I was in 4th grade. But it's interesting because we're reaching about 5 million passengers that come through Norfolk International Airport, and really no mass transit to go back and forth. So really relying on taxi, obviously the parking and things like that. So really the passenger requirements for mass transit is not necessarily there, but we do have employees. I mean, the airport authority has about 250 employees, but there's over 1,000 employees when it comes to TSA, the airlines, the baggage handlers, and all the folks that work at the airport. And we do have some folks that do still just take the mass transit on Military Highway and walk to the airport on Norview. If you guys probably drive past that all the time. So we do have some folks that do that all year round. So there is still a need for that. So there are opportunities if we can continue that discussion. The other thing also is that we have some airport properties that are coming up that we can potentially use as opportunities for HRT to use, specifically right off of Robin Hood Road when you get off the highway right there, off of Military and Robin Hood. So there's potential if there's need for transportation hubs, if you will, that's close to the airport, that we can also expand that for use in the airport. So plenty of opportunities. We're working with HRTPO and the group. So as the Chief Commercial Officer coming on board, I am definitely happy to continue that discussion. Hope we can bring that to the airport. Thank you.
My husband is the asset manager for the maintenance group at HRT. So please keep taking and funding public transportation.
Some of you may not know what I do, but I run an agency for people coming back from prison. Those people don't have cars. They don't have any modes of transportation. So I'm a big purchaser of HRT's funds for bus tickets, and we use buses all around and other modes of transportation. Light rail provided by HRT. So I'm grateful for them for that. And I hope to see each and every one of you on Transit Day.
Nothing happening up in DC,
I wouldn't know. I actually, yeah, exactly. No, I just wanted to say I spent a week in New York City. So I know all about transportation. I flew up there. I was on the Long Island Railroad, took the subways, the buses, the cabs, the lifts, and everything else. And I'm just envious, as we should all be. So that's all. Just wanted to drop that in there.
Around the corner, anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. And I did put my business cards on the table outside the room if anyone needs to reach me. My email is also on the legislative agenda that's at your desk. Thanks again, and Happy New Year.
Amy, Ray, Matt, Ben, anything to add?
We have in the plans a first route to serve the airport as part of the system optimization plan, be the Route 9. I don't have a date for you yet because the city of Norfolk has to sign off on it. But it'll go up Azalea Garden Road and then eventually end up at the amphib base. It's a start. At least it's a route that serves the airport. You know, you may not know how we fund service, but the city that the route runs in has to approve it. So right now Norfolk tacitly had said yes to it. So that's a good piece of news. I'll have more information when I come talk about the system optimization plan because I've been invited by my friends to talk about it.
So great news from us, got an early Christmas present, awarded the contract to build a transfer center in the northern area of our service zone. This will replace where we currently have 4 routes transferring in a Walmart parking lot. Thank you to the center's offices for helping realize that. We're very excited, groundbreaking coming soon. And then more good news from Ben.
Yeah, in addition to that, we have the bids released right now for our main bus depot, our operations maintenance facility. So we intend on awarding that contract this month on the 22nd at our board meeting. So look forward to getting that project underway as well. We anticipate groundbreaking for that sometime no later than June.
I just wanted to mention what the young lady said at the far end to my right over here about paratransit. I took a ride along with the paratransit of water, and I noticed that the customers and the drivers also have a good rapport. So it makes it a lot easier for the drivers to feel more comfortable. I mean, the passengers to feel more comfortable when they're traveling with the drivers. They build up a nice rapport. And I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the presentation on paratransit. Excellent. I'd like to get a copy of the PowerPoint if I could. And it's really important that we just continue this conversation as we discussed with the growing population and the need. Really appreciative. Thank you.
Around the corner, anybody have anything?
I'd also like a copy of the presentation for paratransit. My office, the Office of Institutional Equity and Diversity, was awarded a grant from the National Endowment of the Arts called the Big Read Grant. And with that grant, we're exploring health equity. So I would love to get a copy of that.
So just to respond to both comments, all our presentations and material information is on our website. We can follow up with an email so you know where to. So all of these presentations and materials will be there.
Part of the reason that I'm here is to advocate for our students at Tidewater Community College. Last year, we started our first climate and culture survey. And one of the things that students mentioned last year and this year was concerns about transportation. Particularly, some of our students mentioned that it takes them about 2 hours to get from Portsmouth to Norfolk campus. So think about that as it relates to being a barrier for education. Our students represent a large population of what will be and is the workforce of Hampton Roads. And so I look forward to continuing coming to these meetings and working diligently together to ensure that we have equitable transportation for our students as well, which represent the future of our workforce.
Thanks, Dr. K. Comments? Mary Kay?
I had the opportunity, I think it was in October, I met with someone from HRT's on-demand rideshare program, and I think that the paratransit thing made me think of that, and I think that if it's possible, I'd like to know an update on that because it's a pilot program for the Bayside area, Virginia Beach, and then also Newport News. Great representation. I promote it at the institution. I don't know if it's being utilized, but I'd like to see how that's going.
You bet. I'd just like to thank Dr. Ross Hammond in this public forum. We have for all of your work on City Council in Virginia Beach. Among a changing cast of characters up there, we're going to see some new faces next week when they meet for the first time. And if you ever watch our Virginia Beach City Council meetings, Dr. Ross Hammond's steadiness and maturity and long-serving tenure on that board, even though she took a few years off, is clearly evident.
Thank you so much. I'm humbled for your kind words.
Yes, thanks. Just two things. First of all, I want to thank HRTBO and this group for calling out the Elizabeth River Trail under trail priorities for the legislative priorities. So really, really appreciate that. And then I wanted to share our 2024 trail use numbers because I've just calculated them. And it's our first full year of data of having 5 trail counters along our 10.5 miles. And the numbers are in and they're pretty astounding. So for 2024, we've had 672,503 trail use interactions, which is pretty incredible. So really excited. And first time ever in the year that we had our an East End counter, our farthest east near Harbor Park, and it is over 30,000 users higher than our farthest North End counter at Larchmont Library, which just goes to show our East End is being used. So exciting news. Thank you.
I'm a firm believer that the Tide is one of the best ways to get around downtown Norfolk, especially during events. And it was exciting to learn more about that a little bit today, along with the request for funding. I think that funding would allocate more funds to increase the services, accessibility, and efficiency of the systems. So I'm excited to see what's to come.
Thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that the HRTPO has 3 items out right now for public notice. We have some tip amendments, but something that I think will be very important for this group is the the LRTP 2050 draft candidate transportation projects. So that is part of our long range transportation plan. You can think of it as like the transportation planning vision for the future of Hampton Roads. And we have some candidate projects that are out as part of our public notice. So if you go to hrtpo.org, right there on our front page, we have public notice. It's in the icon of a compass. You can click on there at any time, see any of our public notices. They're available for public comment. You can send those in and have your input included in that process.
I agree with the gentleman that gave a compliment to Amtrak. I've taken it to DC several times for work, and I beat my coworkers up there who drove. It was relaxing. I could work and read if I wanted to, but it was smooth and it was fun and very pretty.
I gotta say, this is a great, exciting start to 2025. If I can, I'll just put on I recently started with a new company that we're building hydrogen fueled maritime craft. So really interested in looking at the maritime waterways, ferries, hydrofoil, that sort of thing. So if there's any interest in that, I'll probably look at that opportunity just open up there. So yeah, looking forward to 2025 with you all.
Great, thank you.
Let me just tell you, I have been awakened to the density of the traffic more so than ever since I've been coming to these meetings. Everywhere I go now, I am looking for a bus stop along the roads and the routes. I'm like hypersensitive now. And I can't tell you the number of times throughout the holidays as I traveled the region, my God, what I wouldn't give to have a light rail that would take me from point A to point B. And I'm willing to pay. Okay, so you've got a firm believer here. And I'm hoping that we can multiply our group.
Well, thank you. Many times this is the most enjoyable part of our meetings, I think, hearing what's on the top of everyone's mind. So thank you. I really appreciate it again. You'll be receiving some follow-up from us in terms of ways that you can lean in and weigh in with our caucus members and at the General Assembly. It sounds like, Ray, we have the makings of a good next agenda. So I think that we'll probably be looking at that February timeframe for our next meeting. More information to come on that. But really look forward to working with everybody in 2025. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great weekend, everyone.